Your daily dose of sports talk is here. Highlights, interviews, and analysis. From the entertainment capital of the world, SportsWrap with Jason Page starts now.
Yes, it does, and good to have you with us on this Friday edition of the show all across the United States and Canada. Hello to our friends watching, especially those of you in Montreal. Undoubtedly in a good mood on this Friday after your Canadians went into Raleigh and put a beating on the Hurricanes. I'm not going to lie, I took a special kind of joy in that. Because the Hurricanes are my beloved Hartford Whalers, who Peter Karmanos took out of Hartford and moved to North Carolina, and I've never forgiven him, and I can never root for that organization. As a result, it ruined my love for hockey. But I digress as we get this Friday edition of the show started. A lot to talk about over the next 60 minutes. We will be joined by our friends Tino Pattigno of SiriusXM NASCAR Radio and Tubi, Jerry Bonkowski from Essentially Sports. Both of them cover NASCAR, on the passing of Kyle Busch, which we'll get to coming up here in a couple moments in the big story. There is also a lot more to talk about today. The NBA, we've got the conference finals in full swing. Both of those series now go to Game 3. The Knicks fully in control. Spurs and Thunder, very much a coin flip after the first two games of that series. We'll get to the hockey. There is NFL news to talk about as well. But we start things out, as we always do, on this Friday edition of the show. It's time for the big story. And the big story today is tragedy around the NASCAR world and the NASCAR community, as that sport grapples with yet another untimely passing of one of its stars. More than 2 decades ago, it was Dale Earnhardt Jr. Losing his life on the track. It was Greg Biffle during this offseason passing away in a plane crash, a horrific plane crash. As somebody who was so good at giving back to the community and helping those in need. He helped people in the Carolinas after a storm ravaged that area, after a hurricane ravaged that area. And now Kyle Busch. At the age of 41, NASCAR has lost Kyle Busch. And people are going to be searching for answers as to why. I have brought on people today that are far better than me at articulating what he meant to the sport of NASCAR. What he meant to auto racing. Go and look at the wins across Craftsman Truck Series, the Xfinity, now the O'Reilly Series, and the Cup Series. Over 300. I mean, it's remarkable to think of his impact and another driver who's had as much of an impact on the sport as he had, his legions of fans. But I'm going to say this. And there's going to be a lot of discussion about this in the days ahead, and we're going to learn a lot more in the days ahead. It is very troubling to me that a 41-year-old, seemingly healthy, who had a little bit of a cough and some sinus issues, basically a week ago, is dead today. And that, to me, has to be a part of this story that is dissected and analyzed, and we have to figure out what the hell happened here with Kyle Busch. The latest reporting from TMZ, and there may be more reporting by the time you see the show today. So understand that. I'm not trying to leave anything out. We tape in the morning, close to afternoon, almost noon on the East Coast. But you have a guy going to a race simulator, pass out, go to a hospital, and he's dead all within the same day. And that is just impossible for me to fathom. That from point A, if we go back to the information of a week ago, to point C, there's a whole bunch missing in between. And we have to get answers as to why a 41-year-old who is, won a Craftsman truck race just a week ago, how this guy is no longer with us. It is beyond tragic. And it's not something that should happen. And we got to get to the bottom of why it happened. And we will obviously continue to report on it as we get more information in the days ahead. Jerry Bonkowski will join me coming up in about 7 minutes to talk about the passing of Kyle Busch as somebody who is a historian of the sport. And then Tino Pattigno will join us a little later on in the show. Rest in peace, Kyle Busch. May his memory be a blessing. Our thoughts and prayers go out to him, the entire NASCAR family, his extended family as well. Big story number 2 on the court. The Cavaliers, look, could any of us be surprised? Hello to our friends watching on Rock Nation Sports and Entertainment, Rock Sports and Entertainment Network in Ohio. Could any of us be surprised that the Cavaliers have rolled over and died after the way they lost Game 1 against the Knicks? Could any of us be surprised? And let's keep in mind that this is a team that has James Harden on it. So should any of us be shocked at what the end result is going to be here? I said the Knicks would win in 5. They may damn well sweep them at this point. And as much as I want to make this about the Knicks, I can't. Because it cannot be overstated just how disappointing this Cavaliers effort has been in this series through the first 2 games. And yes, I'm including Game 1 when they were great for 42 minutes and then forgot that an NBA game is 48 minutes, and in that case, even a little longer than that, 53 minutes, because they needed overtime to find a winner. How does Evan Mobley get no shots in the second half of that game? Josh Hart, who was, who really struggled in Game 1, Mike Brown had to pull him off the court at key stretches of that game. He had been struggling with his shot, comes out and plays his best game of this postseason. And the Knicks go on to get a victory in Game 2 in blowout fashion. And now, whether that series ends in 4, whether it ends in 5, who knows, maybe it makes it to 6, it's going to end. And I want you to let this sink in for a second here, because we've made this about the Cavaliers here for a minute. The New York Knicks are going to have a chance to win an NBA championship. Remember, they won the NBA Cup this year. They didn't want to put a banner up or anything like that. James Dolan said the team wasn't going to do that, and I'm okay with that. But the New York Knicks, you want something that is galvanizing for the NBA, galvanizing for basketball. The New York Knicks are going to be playing for an NBA championship for the first time, 25 years plus? 30 years? 25, roughly. Lost to the Spurs in the finals. And Patrick Ewing was hurt. They might have won a championship that year. I know I'm still sour about it. We'll talk about the passing of Kyle Busch with Jerry Bonkowski next. Welcome back to the show. I've had my say in the big story on a just unthinkably tragic day for the sports world, the NASCAR community, the auto racing world in general. I can think of no better person to lean on for expertise and perspective on a day like this than Jerry Bonkowski, who does a terrific job with Essentially Sports, NASCAR and auto racing columnist. I consider him a historian of the sport, and somebody whose perspective I really value on a day like this. I wish we were talking on better terms. Let's just get to the nuts and bolts of this first. The latest reporting TMZ had this morning is that he passed out in a simulator before being rushed to the hospital. The thing about this is, and I want to talk about his career and his life because that's what a lot of people want to remember. There's no way a seemingly healthy 41-year-old goes from having a little cough and some sinus issues the last time he was racing to passing out in a simulator to dead in a matter of days. So there's either a component of this that is not yet being reported or told, or we just don't know and the family doesn't know and they're going to find this out post-mortem. This whole thing is just crazy, Jerry.
It really is. And, I don't want to make this sound about me, but I was in a very similar situation as Kyle was I had one of the worst sinus infections I've ever had 3 weeks ago, right around the same time he had it. And I wound up going to the doctor, got all kinds of meds, and they even talked about putting me in the hospital. They eventually didn't. Now I'm okay, except for my voice is still a little bit raw. But it scared the crap out of me when I heard that this was potentially a sinus-related issue. We don't know, like you said, yet. We will know eventually, but it just hits so close to home. I was very fortunate in being friendly with Kyle. I'll never forget, and I wrote about this in Essentially Sports, my column that came up today. One of the most heartbreaking, heart-wrenching times I've ever had with an athlete was the day after Rick Hendrick announced Dale Earnhardt Jr. was coming to Hendrick Motorsports in 2008. The day after, we had a press luncheon in Chicago. Kyle was there. It was myself and two other reporters, and he was just unbelievably sad. He wanted to cry, and he said, "I don't know what my future is. I don't." And this was before Joe Gibbs. The whole signing there, and I've never seen an athlete that sorrowful and not know about his future. And it was the first thing I thought of when I heard the sad news yesterday. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, it really is. And I mean, the poignant words, and we played it in the big story of him winning the Craftsman truck race, on the 15th, or I think it was just a week ago, and saying after the race why he appreciates it so much because you never know when it's your last. And that just hits so hard right now. I'm trying to hold it together. When you see something like this, and all of these guys, when you get in the car, you think the thing that could take your life is driving 170 miles an hour, side by side with other vehicles. You don't think it's going to be, some sort of sinus situation or whatever we're going to find out eventually that took his life. And it just goes to, we talked about this recently when there was another passing in the sport of just how snake-bitten this sport feels like it is, of its stars and treasured, athletes of this sport losing their lives far too early, Jerry.
And losing them not on the racetrack. Like you said, you didn't, if you kind of anticipate a driver passing, it's on a racetrack as opposed to something off the racetrack. And we saw that with Greg Biffle almost 6 months ago. And we saw that obviously with Kyle yesterday. And it's just like Kyle said, you never know when it's going to be your last one. And that goes for your last race, your last win, and your last day on earth.
Is this generation's Dale Earnhart Jr. in terms of the significance of this passing?
Unquestionably. In fact, a lot of people say, well, he wasn't as good as Richard Petty. No, I wouldn't exactly agree with that because he's got more wins. Of course, they're over 3 different series as opposed to just one series. Some people say he wasn't as good as Dale Earnhardt. I would disagree with that as well, too. I think that Kyle was most definitely our Richard Petty. He was our Dale Earnhardt. He was our Jeff Gordon. I mean, he was just an incredible individual. Yeah, he had a bad rep. He was, he liked to wear the black hat, so to speak. But that's what Dale Earnhardt did. And Kyle and I talked many times about how people compared him with Earnhardt. And he actually embraced that idea. He liked being the villain. He liked being the bad guy. But as he got older, as he got married, as he started having kids, he turned out to be really a heck of a nice guy, as much like his brother Kurt. Although Kurt obviously does not have any children, but very similar. Kurt was very hard around the edges early on in his career, and he became one of the nicest people there is out there. Same thing with Kyle.
How will NASCAR rally around his family in a moment like this?
That's a difficult question to answer because, there's going to be the obligatory moments of silence, the prayers at both the Coca-Cola 600 this Sunday night, as well as the Indianapolis 500 earlier in the day. And that was Kyle's, big thing. He wanted to do the double like his brother did. NASCAR is as bad as NASCAR, or I'm sorry, as hard as NASCAR took Greg Biffle. I think NASCAR is going to take this so much more difficult and so much more harder because he was an active driver. He was the first active, and I saw this stat this morning, first active driver to pass since Dale Earnhardt.
Wow.
That's an unbelievable stat. I mean, and you don't even think about it until you see it and you go, that's right, and it's sad. I think that NASCAR is definitely going to rally around Kyle and his family. He's not going to be forgotten. I can guarantee you that. And it's sad that people were talking the other day about when they announced the NASCAR Hall of Fame for next, next January, they're going to induct him. People were saying, well, why wasn't Greg Biffle inducted posthumously and skipped over the eligibility rules? Well, people are going to start saying that about Kyle Busch as well, too. But I can guarantee you, not next year in 28, or 27 rather, but in 28, you're going to see both of them inducted posthumously.
Yeah, and I think you need that sort of period of time to sort of let this breathe. I know emotionally it sounds great to say, oh, just put him in now, but I think it's okay to let it breathe a little bit, Jerry.
I agree with you. And although when Biffle passed, and I knew Biffle quite well.
Yeah, I remember you saying.
And I wrote that must the same day. I think I wrote that he should have been, a mandatory induction in the Hall of Fame, regardless of the rules. I feel kind of the same way with Kyle, but you're right. You do have to let this kind of, you need to let yourself calm down from all this and remember him for what he was. And this, as the more time that goes on, the more time you'll have to reflect and remember the man who he was on the racetrack as well as off the racetrack.
Jerry Bonkowski wrote a great piece over on Essentially Sports. I'd encourage everybody to check it out. We'll also link to it on the YouTube channel as well, so people can check it out there. Jerry, a sad day for NASCAR. All my best, my friend. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you, Jason. Take care.
Welcome back to the show. Coming up in 10 minutes, special presentation. We had a great conversation on Wednesday with David Aardsma, former big league reliever and closer. We got into it on the incredible starting pitching and pitching in general that we've seen around Major League Baseball, but in particular starting pitching with ERAs way down. Wanted to get his thoughts on what the cause of this is around Major League Baseball. So the former big league reliever and closer hangs out with us every Wednesday when we go inside baseball, and he'll help us sort of dissect that story from this first quarter of the baseball season, first third of the baseball season. That coming up in about 10 minutes. But let's focus our attention for a few minutes on the NBA and hockey. We've got conference finals going on. We talked about a little bit in the big story. The Knicks beating the Cavaliers last night and doing it in convincing fashion to take a 2-0 series lead, with that series shifting back to Cleveland for Game 3. Cavaliers have been good at home. No doubt about that. And they will push the Knicks. But their performance last night, coming off that horrific choke job in Game 1 where they blew a 22-point lead with about 7 minutes to play, that feels like it sort of ended the series, didn't it? We all wondered how they would come out in Game 2. And early on, they actually looked pretty good in Game 2. But then the Knicks got on their horse. And Josh Hart played extremely well in this game. And before you knew it, a game that was close at the half turned into a rout in the second half. And again, Josh Hart, a big part of the reason why, easily his best game of the postseason, might have been one of the best games of his career, if you go and look at it by the numbers. I mean, Hart for the Knicks last night, give you the real quick numbers on it. I'll pull it up while we do the segment. It's okay. Nobody's going to mind. Josh Hart last night, 18 points, 7 of 12, 13 rebounds. He was a plus 18. And yes, everybody on the Knicks scored in double figures in the starting lineup. I am still a little concerned about the Knicks bench, especially when we get to the NBA Finals. And we will be getting to the NBA Finals with the Knicks. Just a question of how many games it takes. And I think if you're a Knicks fan, by the way, you're getting the very best scenario imaginable. Short series against the Cavaliers, and the Thunder and Spurs are going to beat the snot out of each other, essentially, for the next week and a half. And if you're a Knicks fan, that means you're going to be fully rested. You are going to have the optimal situation for a New York Knicks team headed to the NBA Finals to try and win their first title in over a couple of generations. Of course, I'm sorry, I said Josh Hart at 18. 26 points, 10 of 21 shooting, 5 of 11 from 3. He had really struggled from 3 recently. 4 rebounds, 7 assists, a plus 18. I flip-flopped his numbers with Karl Anthony Towns. And the Knicks only got 19 from Jalen Brunson. They didn't need much more than that. They shot 52% from the field. The Cavaliers just 39%. So that series is a wrap. It's just a question of how many games it winds up taking. But let's be honest about it. I think we all can realize at this point that series is a wrap. Now, Spurs Thunder Game 3 in San Antonio tonight. I am fascinated to watch how this game is officiated. Because if it's officiated the way it was in Game 2, the Spurs are in trouble. Because Isaiah Hartenstein basically groped Victor Wembanyama that entire game. So I want to see the officials clamp down on that tonight if I'm Mitch Johnson. And we're still waiting to hear about De'Aaron Fox. Does he play or not? Does Harper play? Dylan Harper suffered the hamstring injury. I'd be shocked if we saw him again, maybe in this series. But don't discount what a return for De'Aaron Fox would mean for this team. They need him back out there. You were able to get one game without him, and that was the one you needed to get. The Thunder coming off the long layoff, Spurs fresh. That was the game you needed to get. But now you got to get De'Aaron Fox back out there. Have a true point guard running this offense. So that's what you got going on in the NBA. Over in the NHL, hats off to the Montreal Canadiens. They scored 4 first-period goals last night in Raleigh en route to a 6-2 rout of the Carolina Hurricanes, who have looked as close to unbeatable as you will see in a Stanley Cup playoff situation. And look, we talked about it with Dennis Bernstein on the show yesterday. Was there the potential, not for a letdown, but a team that wasn't sharp in the early going, coming off the long layoff that the Hurricanes had? And that's what you had. There's no other way to account for 4 first-period goals. The Canadiens just looked like the sharper team in Game 1 of this series. And I expect the Hurricanes to bounce back in a big way. But much like Colorado tonight at home against the Golden Knights, this is a must-win coming up this weekend for Carolina. As good as they've been, you go down 2-0 in this best of 7, going back to Montreal, which will be up for grabs when they get back there on Sunday, I believe, is game 3 of that series. If not, it's Monday on Memorial Day. I mean, good luck, man, if Carolina doesn't get Game 2. I expect they will get Game 2. If I am Las Vegas tonight, and they're fairly decent underdogs tonight. I think the Avalanche are going at -188 tonight for game 2 of this series in Denver. If I am Colorado, as I said, a must-win for them. But if I am Las Vegas, you are playing with house money. You have no idea if Makar is going to play for Colorado, still dealing with this undisclosed injury. You have no idea if he's playing. If I am John Tortorella in this crew tonight, just roll the pucks out there on the ice and go have at it. You're playing with house money at this point. You already did what you came to do. You got Game 1. All the pressure shifts to Colorado in Game 2. Play loose. Play fast. You've got a golden opportunity right now, if you are Las Vegas, to put your foot on the throat, or in this case, your skate on the throat, which wouldn't be very comfortable. All right, don't do it. Don't put it there. Put your skate on their chest. We don't need to put the skate on the throat. But I love the position right now that Las Vegas is in going into Game 2 tonight. How can you not? We'll recap it all on Monday's show. All right, we're coming back. My conversation with David Aardsma on pitching in Major League Baseball next. Welcome back to the show. Coming up in 10 minutes, we'll continue the conversation on the passing of Kyle Busch with our friend Tino Pattigno, SiriusXM NASCAR radio handicapping expert, and also with Tubi. Let's talk some baseball. If you missed it on Wednesdays, we have Sports Wrap going inside baseball. We do this with David Aardsma, former big league reliever and closer. And I wanted to spend some extra time on pitching this week, him being the former reliever and all, because pitching right now is in. Forget chicks dig the long ball. They dig the strikeout, I think, more than ever because we're seeing plenty of it with all the hard-throwing guys around baseball. So I started digging into the numbers, and it was something I wanted to get some expertise on. So, of course, we chatted about it with our friend David Aardsma. I started going through pitching numbers because I said, I got to do my prep now since I got Aardsma on tomorrow. And I said, I got to go through some pitching stuff. I cannot recall a time with this much of a sampling this early in the season that we have seen pitching numbers like we are seeing up and down all across baseball. Usually pitchers might start out hot and then hitters catch up, or vice versa. Pitching is just dominating the story for me. Yeah, we could talk about Kyle Schwarber and all that stuff, but I've got, Chris Sale. We don't even talk about Chris Sale. The Miz, Chase Burns, Christopher Sanchez, Davis.
Is that what we're going with? Is that the nickname, The Miz?
That's what a lot of people are saying. Ryan Glasspiegel from front office last night was saying he was going to watch The Miz. He was sitting behind home plate to watch The Miz, and I didn't think he meant the wrestler. So Davis Martin, Nick Martinez, Cam Schlittler, all these guys with sub-2 ERAs. At this stage of the season, what do you contribute this to?
Well, there's 7 starters with ERAs below 2 at this point, which is insane, and none of them are named Paul Skeens. That's right. When you look at Paul Skeens and you go down the line and he's 17th in ERA. Yeah, there's something going on, and he's absolutely dealing. It's just the continual evolution of pitching. And the understanding, a lot of hitters, and I went on record and said this, a lot of hitters think ABS are going to go in their direction. No, brother. Nope.
So you do contribute some of this to ABS?
I think what it is a hitter's completely misunderstanding of how good umpires actually are because they complain and they think they get away with things. The umpires are actually calling it in the hitter's favor. And now when you move to the ABS, and the hitters don't have that advantage. They don't get to whine and moan and get an umpire to change calls over time. The pitchers always had the advantage when you do that. The smaller you get the zone, the better the pitcher actually gets because they get to work within the margins and they've never had to say anything. And so we're getting those calls where the hitters think the zone got smaller. No, the zone just got correct.
Michael King is flourishing. I always thought he had the potential to be a good starter, even when he was with the Yankees, had some injury issues. Yeah. Let me start at the top, though, with Cam Schlittler here. I mean, would you be shocked at all if we got to the end of the year and he was the Cy Young Award winner in the American League? Is he that good?
He's that good. But we also saw that, too. So this isn't a flash in the pan. This isn't like all of a sudden he's a guy out of nowhere. He had a sub-3 last year, and he was good. I get it. It was only 73 innings, but now you're seeing the same pitcher. You're seeing somebody who's going out there and doing the same type of thing. So, no, it is not going to surprise me.
It's been remarkable. And we all knew Chase Burns had this potential, in Cincinnati. Go look at the AL Central. the NL Central with Mizorowski, Chase Burns. We can go, obviously Paul Skeens that you could go through. The NL Central's got a lot of these guys. And again, we're not even talking about Skeens, who you mentioned at 2.62. Parker Messick, who almost threw the no-hitter. He's at 2.45. Do you think, though, as the weather warms, we get into the warmer months of summer, do you think that eventually there is some regression to the mean here?
Without a doubt. And there always is. There's always a slight regression. That's where you see pitchers like a Mizorowski or a pitcher, again, we're still guessing on Mizorowski. It's really still so young on his career. But a guy like Paul Skeens or Chris Sale, would they know how to pitch through those hot summer months, the grind of pitching every single outing and going out there, facing hitters who are now adjusting to them? And that's the thing, is there's a lot of guys on this list that are still somewhat new to a list like this. And so we'll see how the hitters adjust over time. But it's not surprising with how pitching has evolved and how has changed that there are so many guys on this list.
Is this an endorsement of the idea of velocity? When you look up and down this list and look at the pitchers on it, is this an endorsement of harder, harder, and harder is the way to go, and teaching velocity and all of that is the way to go? Or is there something you can point to in this list that says, not so fastly, Harvey?
Stuff. I would say this is the stuff, and velocity is one factor in those type of things. It's late movement, command of the zone with late movement, essentially. And so whether that's one pitch, 5 pitches, that's what this is an endorsement of. Velocity is a huge part to do with that, but we've always had velocity. I came up in the minor leagues. We had guys throwing 102. They just couldn't. They didn't have stuff. They couldn't throw strikes with it. So this whole list is basically of guys that have elite stuff, which means they can move the ball around, throw it hard where they want to, when they want to. That's always been the game.
We're coming back. Tino Pattigno joins us to talk about the passing of Kyle Busch. What does it mean for the sport? And also, there is a NASCAR race scheduled for this weekend in Charlotte. All of that and more as Sports Wrap continues. Welcome back to the show. Circling back to our top story on this Friday, the passing of Kyle Busch, NASCAR icon, just 41 years old. I got the historical context on his career and passing with Jerry Bonkowski from Essentially Sports earlier in the show. Fridays we talk with Tino Pattigno. Mondays we talk with Jerry Bonkowski. I wanted to allow both of them to sort of opine and remember such a figure that loomed so large over the sport. And Tino Pattigno is with us, as he is every Friday on this show, on a different kind of NASCAR Friday than we're used to having, Tino. And yeah, I'll just share something, I hope you don't mind, in texting with you yesterday. It felt like this one, this is your generation. This is your guy from your generation. It feels like this one has hit guys like you harder for that reason. Am I reading that correctly?
You are. Kyle Busch, the epitome of a race car driver. A lot of people yesterday in shock because of this, rightfully so. And I was speechless trying to comprehend what had happened. And in doing so and thinking about it and thinking about Kyle Busch and his legacy, the words started to come to me because of what he did for the sport, what he did for so many people, the experiences I have shared with others watching him drive a race car. But it's more than just that, right? And I'm 25 years old, so for Dale Earnhardt's passing, I was not there to feel it live in the moment. But I can only imagine it feels something similar like this. And the reason I say that is because Kyle Busch was such a personality, a polarizing personality and person. And the fact that for some people who may not know NASCAR, they still know Kyle Busch. And to me, that was very important growing up because this is a driver, this is a guy who 234 wins across all 3 series, 9th on the all-time wins list, 2 championships, right? But the story I want to share about him is how he inspired others to be themselves. Growing up, watching him, he was deemed as the villain of the sport, the bad guy on the track. You push him, he'll push you back harder and then go out and dominate a race. And something like that was awesome to see. But over time, that villain matured, and it was truly just him being a competitor. And I think a lot of people got to see that version of Kyle Busch as he grew up, as I grew up, as other people who were watching the sport for a long time got to experience this shift in who he really was. But maybe it wasn't ever really a shift. Maybe it was more so him opening up and growing as we all can do. And I say this because we saw him be a race team owner helping young drivers like William Byron, Christopher Bell, Bubba Wallace, and many more make it to the top level of the NASCAR Cup Series. We saw him become a father, right? And that was something that he embraced, whether it was posting online or not, but it was very visible, the fact that he supported his son in racing, but also his daughter as well, making funny videos with her. And that's something to where you see this fierce competitor on the track, but also seeing this loving father and caring dad. And to me, I'm laughing because they had to change the rules of the lower levels of the NASCAR Xfinity Series, which is now O'Reilly Series, and the Truck Series, because Kyle Busch would go out there and dominate so much. They didn't want him to win every single race there. And the young drivers now value racing against him and what that was like, because he makes them better. And that was my whole feeling with this, is he was a driver and a person that just made people around him better, a competitor that was so fierce that you had to truly respect it. And this loss doesn't feel real because he was just that, real. And I think those are the type of people that impact lives the most, right? He was a person, an athlete, a pro athlete who turned a fan base into a nation, Rowdy Nation, as they call it. So I think that's his impact, that's his legacy, all that and much more. But when you stay gold in those ways, those are the type of people that leave an impact so profound to many others out there.
You traveled to races from time to time. I've seen you out here in Vegas. Whenever you did interact with him, what did you come away with?
Just the presence, right? The aura, if you will, around him was strong. It was palpable. It was whether you're on the media center as a fan, walk by him on the track, that's Kyle Busch. And he, from race team to race team, whether it's with Joe Gibbs racing in the M&M's car or RCR driving the number 8 again, you felt that. And I'll also say this, when he was struggling, right? It gets harder to win as you get older for a lot of people. I really admired the fact that he still tried so hard. This is a guy that has nothing to prove to anyone. He is one of the best all time to do it, to race a race car. But still, he tried to come up with solutions, was all in when the cards were against him. And that's not something that I think a lot of pro athletes would do in those scenarios that Kyle Busch was in.
There is a race this weekend. I don't know if they're going to have it on Sunday because there's all sorts of rain in the forecast for the Coca-Cola 600. Does that race wind up getting pushed to Monday? And what kind of cloud is there sort of over that race? Just how heavy are the emotions going to be for a lot of these guys?
The emotions are powerful for everyone in the sport right now, and even others. But this is a time that where NASCAR will go out there and they will race, just like they did after Dale Earnhardt's passing, just like they did after 9/11. This is a time to where our sport needs the sport. And Kyle Busch, unfortunately, it will never be the same with him not being there.
Yeah.
But guys like Denny Hamlin, guys like William Byron, any of the drivers out there can go have a strong race, put on a great show for the fans, because I know that's what Kyle would have wanted to do.
Tino Pattigno does a great job. SiriusXM NASCAR Radio and on Tubi. Catch him this weekend as well. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
Just about time to put the wraps on this baby for another week. A few reminders before we say goodbye. Sports Wrap Weekends. 30-minute recap of everything we talked about during the week. That's on many of these same affiliates. If not, check your local listing for time and schedule. Could be carried on a different station within your market. Could be on one of your sister stations. Sports Wrap Weekends. Sports Wrap with Jason Page, the podcast. The audio version of this show, Monday through Friday, available wherever you get your podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Odyssey, Amazon. Anywhere you get a podcast, you can listen to this show Monday through Friday, crystal clear audio, available early each afternoon. Go and subscribe to the podcast as well. We appreciate that. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page YouTube channel is the place to find all things, of course, Sports Wrap with Jason Page. The Monday through Friday TV version of the show, with all the commercials taken out of it, available Monday through Friday, Again, right here, if you're watching on the YouTube channel now, you can see it. If you're watching on TV, you want to watch it on the YouTube channel, you can do that as well. We appreciate it all the same. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page YouTube channel is the place for that. Extended conversations are there as well. Things that we don't have time for in the show. We run long. We only have an hour here each day. They go into that YouTube channel. Also, Sports Wrap Shorts available there. When news breaks, we jump in with Sports Wrap Shorts, 1 to 3 minute long vertical videos made for people on the go. Sports Wrap Shorts on the YouTube channel. Also available on our TikTok, Sports Wrap Jason Page, and on our Instagram, the same name right there. You could use it, Sports Wrap Jason Page, and you will find those Sports Wrap Shorts. And now, without any further delay on this Friday edition of the show, for the final time this week, time for some odds and ends. Odds and ends, Matthew Stafford getting one last big payday. How about to the tune of $55 million? It makes it a little harder to say win one for the Gipper, doesn't it? When you're getting $55 million in what could conceivably be his final season. Now remember, Ty Simpson got drafted by this team, this past year. So there's no question they're grooming him to be the future of this franchise. Sean McVay didn't seem crazy about that at the time, but I'm sure he'll warm up to the idea as he remembers how old Matthew Stafford is at the age of 38, coming off an MVP season. It'll be interesting to see what he looks like this year. That is a team that is in win-now mode. And certainly has Super Bowl aspirations. We'll see what Matthew Stafford could do. Again, a $55 million contract for Matthew Stafford for the upcoming season. All the best to him on that. Odds and ends, the Giants, without Dexter Lawrence, who they traded away here in this offseason, now they've got another interesting problem. Roy Robertson Harris has suffered a torn Achilles. Not exactly the way that John Harbaugh wanted to start off his New York Giants tenure as head coach and de facto GM. I know. Now, look, here's something interesting going on right now. Can we get a picture of Joe Schoen up here? Everybody thought Joe Schoen recently was going to be out of a job. They thought it was just days away from happening that Joe Schoen was going to be out of a job. Now you read the reports, Joe Schoen's going to get a new contract. Joe Schoen's about to get an upgrade. Can I upgrade you, sir? So apparently Joe Schoen, not that far away at one point from being out of a job, it felt like, with John Harbaugh coming in, and essentially Giants ownership saying that everybody's answering to John Harbaugh. It's John Harbaugh's way and everybody else is just along for the ride. Which, if anybody's listening to me, I think is a bad idea. I mean, tell me how many times you've got a head coach with that kind of autonomy, with that kind of power, where it winds up going well for a team. It doesn't happen that it goes very well very often. In all sports, quite frankly. But in the NFL in particular, where you've got a lot of different hats to wear as it is. Anyway, bad news for the Giants. Torn Achilles, it looks like, for Roy Robertson Harris. He is done for the upcoming season. Odds and ends, and the WNBA putting out a warning to the Indiana Fever. Be honest when it comes to your injury report. It was the Fever taking on the Chicago Fire, I believe, over the weekend. Or earlier this week, and Caitlin Clark was ruled out very late. She was a late scratch with a back soreness, and WNBA saying, no, that doesn't fly. She should have been on the injury report. There should have been more of a heads up. And again, a lot of this plays into sports betting. If you were somebody that placed a wager on the game earlier in the day, now you've got money on it. Caitlin Clark doesn't play. Now, they wound up winning the game, but all the same, the WNBA wants all of this stuff to be above board. And so they're asking and warning the Indiana Fever to be a little more careful in how they handle that designation, that injury designation. It is expected that Caitlin Clark will play tonight when Indiana takes on Golden State. We'll keep an eye on that. She had some back soreness. Again, a lot of eyes on her this season as to how many games will she miss this time around. She's already missed one here in the early going for a Fever team that is expected to compete for a WNBA championship. And that is going to wrap it up for us on this Friday edition of the show. Thank you to Jerry Bonkowski for jumping on with us. He usually joins us on Monday to talk about Kyle Busch's passing. Thank you as well to Tino Pattigno from SiriusXM NASCAR Radio and Tubi. Also David Aardsma, who we had on this week to talk about the great pitching all around Major League Baseball. Thanks to Sam Yarnell for joining me throughout the week as well, and you for watching. I'm Jason Page. That does it for Sports Wrap. We'll see you this weekend or back here on Monday for an all-new edition of Sports Wrap. Bye-bye.